All right, I'd like to call to order the annual meeting of the Clay Township Board and Board of Finance on Tuesday, January 22nd at 6:01. Do we have a motion to open it?
No, that's it.
And if we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the January 8th organizational meeting.
I moved for approval of minutes.
I second that.
Any discussion?
I don't have any.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next item on our agenda are public comments. Do we have any? Hearing none, we'll move on. First action item is to organize as a Board of Finance pursuant to Indiana Code 513-76 to elect president and a secretary.
Mr. President, I would like to put Mary Eckert into consideration for president of the Board of Finance.
Do we make a motion on that?
I just moved.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And we also need to elect a secretary.
Mr. President, I would move to make you, Matt Snyder, our secretary. I guess
second
that's
that.
legal, right?
As president of the, yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now I take over. Doug, we're going to review the investment policy, and Carl Mills, a former member of our board, is here to talk about it for us. Carl, thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening. Carl Mills, Fifth Third Bank. And yes, Mary, Doug, what?
Hang on a sec. Should I have called the Board of Finance meeting to order before I open?
That's
I
fine.
call the Board of Finance meeting to order. Carl, would you like to make a presentation?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, haven't been on this side for a while. What Doug asked me to do was to briefly explain to you how we've kind of changed your investment policy. We haven't changed the investment policy, but we've changed how we're investing your money. And traditional banking, we would invest basically your cash balances in your checking account, leave it in the checking account, but any excess would get invested in an overnight, either a sweep or maybe some other money market product. And in the advent of the interest rates today, which are exceedingly low, for an example, 5 years ago, same type of interest rate on an account might have gotten you 3-4%. You're getting 10 to 15 basis points. So there's 100 basis points in a percent. So it gives you an idea how far this has gone. So last year what we did, and I've done this with a number of cities and counties that I deal with throughout the state of Indiana, is we looked at balances and we said, okay, what's a better way that we can invest these? And so what we did was we looked at going over to our investment part of the bank. Okay, it's a separate area, with the understanding that all of your monies are protected through the Public Deposit Insurance Fund with the state of Indiana. The only caveat with that is that they have required funds that we're only allowed to invest in. So what we did was we took that ability and we started looking around at different funds through our investment group that would frankly get a higher yield for your money. And so we pulled the money out of your checking account, okay, as much as we possibly could, and we put it into this investment account. And the investment account, we ladder through looking at longer term investments, and Doug helped me here. Has the resolution been passed on the 25% over 2 years?
Yeah, you mean the 5 years?
Yeah, where you can go to
Yeah.
5.
You can go to 5 years.
Yeah, it used to be, and I think Doug explained it to you, that law changed July 1st, where you can take 25% of your total investable assets, and you can invest them longer than 2 years. The state statute used to be, didn't matter what you had, you couldn't invest any money longer than 2 years. So the other thing that we're doing is we're looking at investment tools that we can go out further than 2 years. You know, our recommendations today is we're not going out much more than 2.5 years to 3 years at the most. There's no effectiveness to go to 4 or 5 years with anything. But we see a significant difference between an 18-month investment and a 36-month investment. And when we say significant today, it may not seem like much, but you'll be able to go from 30 or 40 basis points to somewhere around 70, 80, 90 basis points, depending on what you have, which is much better than the 15 or 20 basis points that you'd earn on a checking account. You know, and so far what we've done, we still have a fair amount of this in cash, but it's earning over 20 basis points. But we also have started with some of the tools that we're allowed to use, which is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Any government-secured investment we're allowed to invest in. We've got one that's over 2%. We have another one that's just under 1%. And as these come up and available to us, we're taking the cash out of the cash side of what you have in these accounts, and we're investing in these longer-term investment tools for you. So that's pretty much what we're doing. Questions?
By investing in these mechanisms that are 2, 2.5, 3 years, does that preclude us from getting the money if we need it? I mean, what kind of liquidity do we retain?
What we've done there is the majority of them are marketable CDs. And so what happens is, going into the higher rate of those CDs, we might pay a premium to go in so that we can get that rate, okay? The advantage is, because they're a higher rate, if we would have to sell those CDs, we're obviously going to get that premium back. So from your standpoint, is any money ever at risk? No, not from the standpoint that you're in. What we're doing is we're paying the premium up front so that we can go get the higher rate for you. And the majority of the CDs that we'll do, and Doug and Debbie will get a detailed breakdown of what we do. Normally in the $250,000 range, we'll do a lot of those. We'll ladder a lot of those depending on what the rates are. But no, any of that was the whole idea behind this. Was I said, can't lock the money up. I mean, because you never know what you're going to need. So I wanted the flexibility that if anybody ever had to pull money out, they have the ability to do that. And if they need to pull it out, it's very similar to an overnight sweep, where you can get the money within 1, 2, 3 days, depending on if you need it that soon. We actually have, Paul, 3 cities that I call on, that they've got it down to, they know exactly what their claims are twice a month, and they'll hold 2 months, or in one case 3 months, of those claims in their checking account. Everything else gets invested. And then with the cycle, with when they get their tax draws in June and September, or not September, no, December, they've actually, we're teaching people a different way to do it. Let's draw down on that money as much as we can. You're really not, what they're finding is they're not touching money that they thought they needed to keep for balances. They're not touching that anymore, and we're able to invest that.
Do you have any questions, Matt? Doug, you want to talk to that a bit about us? What do we have in there, and what are we?
Yeah, right now, and one of the things that we were getting hit so hard on was the FDIC assessment. So that's why we lowered it. So in our now account, you see about $14,346 as of the end of the year. Well, what we've got to do, we want to keep it below $250,000, and $250,000 takes us a good few months before we spend it down. So whenever we need to transfer, we just call down to Fifth Third, and they will transfer however much. But as long as we keep it under the $250,000, our FDIC assessment is much, much less. I mean, we were paying $1,000 every month. Well, there goes our interest that we earn plus some. So that was one of the reasons why, when we started talking to Carl, is why they came up with this liquidity management account. So when you look at the sheet you got in front of you, you know, you see $9,817,028. That, when we first started out, we basically said we're going to take so much out of each one of these accounts and push it into there. Well, anyway, we did that, and we still aren't making the money that I'm hoping that we will make. I think that, but eventually we will. At least we're not paying Carl's salary now. I mean, at least we're getting a little bit more than that back. So that's the good thing about this. But I was amazed at the FDIC assessment. I didn't realize how expensive it was until they brought it to our attention. And I'm thinking, wow. So anyway, what you see in front of you is the money we had as of the end of the year. So you're going to see our now account. You know, if it's over 200,000, you know, we have to move money. But like now, our co-op that comes in, or our tax draw that comes in, we're automatically moving it right into this liquidity management account. So we try to keep it around $250,000 or less in that account.
In the now account.
In that now account, right. So that's why you're seeing only $14,000 in there. You know, right after the first year, we had to move, I think we moved $200,000 into that account so we can pay our bills. Our big bills are our debt service, which is in June, and then again in December. So that's when we have to have the money. But the good thing about this liquidity management account, we can do a wire transfer right out of that account. So we don't actually have to move it back in to an account. They will do that. So if we have something big that comes in, we just send them an email down there to Carl's office and say, okay, you know, we need this, and this to be sent to U.S. Bank or whoever. So we really, the nice thing is about it, the only time we were drawing the money out of there, out of the liquidity account, is if we need to write some checks and we don't have enough money in the now account. Because like I say, majority of it now goes into this liquidity account.
That first $1 million that we have to set aside out of the COA for the parks as an emergency reserve, as I recall, in case we go over on
Right.
capital expenditures, can that be placed in a investable account? Or is
It's in here.
It's
in
in
there as
there,
well.
and we actually have broken all this down. What do we have, 6 or 7 different accounts, so that the specific things that you have are broken down. You know, we have one that says parks, so that money's sitting in that account. So that, and what the advantage is for that, which helps Debbie, is when we break out interest, we do it on a percentage basis, and it automatically breaks out into those sub-accounts, and then she gets that, that's exported to her, and she can download it in that fashion.
Are there any other questions or discussions? Anything else to discuss on that topic?
Not for me.
All right, I'd like to call the end to the Board of Finance for the year 2013, and it is now almost 6:15. Board of Finance meeting, not the end of the Board of Finance.
Don't you have to make a motion to approve this
investment policy?
investment
Yeah.
policy?
Okay,
Okay,
is
so-
there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion further than what we've had? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. It's passed, thank you. Now I adjourn the meeting.
Next on the agenda are information items.
No. We've got,
Annual report.
Oh, annual report, excuse me.
I like that, Matt.
We'll
I
just
don't have
skip
no
right
problem with
over
that
that.
Just
whatsoever.
skip right over it.
Absolutely. Okay, sorry, you want me to move?
Oh, yeah.
Let me move ahead.
Oh.
or-
Yeah, please.
Okay,
Do we need a motion?
yeah, you do.
I move that we move the 2012 annual report into discussion. To
Second.
approve? Okay. Now you go on here.
Doug?
Okay, what I'm gonna go do is just go over with what Carl told you, and what I'm gonna do is address the funds that, on the very top page, That's basically what I'm going to address. And then if you have any questions about the annual report, feel free. Debbie worked on this, and I will give the credit to Debbie. She's the one. The nice thing about the state now is the Gateway project, or the Gateway program, where we go on our computers now, and instead of having all the paper spread across our desk and stuff, they now have what we call it's a Gateway program, and we do our budgeting, which when I do it back in August, and now the annual report, and it makes it a lot easier, unless they've got it shut down for some reason. So anyway, I'm going to go through these funds with you, share with what we have in them, and share when our next bills come in for this. The first one is the debt service, and that's on the fire station, 2 fire stations, and the Monon Center or Central Park. And at this present time, we have this is of December 31st, 2012. Okay, we have $2,072,936 in that fund, and it's basically it runs about $4 to $5 million a year, every year. Majority of course of that is in Central Park on that the $55 million bond. And by the way, we're down to about $43 million now on that, so we're moving right along. It will be finished in 2026. The fire stations will be done in January of 2016. So we've only got a few more years on the fire stations, and they'll be paid off. The next one is the township assistance, and there's a total of $173,424 in there at the present time. My budget is $172,000, so we dropped off a lot toward the end of the last year. Wasn't paying out as much, which is a good thing, and I hope the economy continues to go back up for us in this community anyway. The next one is the Farley Cemetery. We got $16,367, and basically that's for any maintaining down the road. I don't spend a lot out of there as far as the budget goes for that. I zero it every year because money that we receive is for future. When something comes up that we really need something major to that cemetery or any of the cemeteries, we can use the funds out of here. So I don't really budget anything. If anything, I take it out of our cemetery and weed line item in the general fund. The next one is the 1111, the firefighting fund. And you'll notice there's $1.5 million still in there. The reason that's still in there, we have not signed the contract with the city of Carmel. Mm-hmm. They now have it and they've had it for about a month. We've been kind of going back and forth about a few things. It's all over the COIT for Southwest Clay. So we'll get it wrapped up. We'll get it taken care of. But I do remember I encumbered that money into this year. So that is sitting there. And our budget for this year is $1.6 million. The next one is the General Buildings Community Life and Learning Center. As you know, we sold that. And right now there's a balance of $56,268 in there. What I will do later on this year, probably the next meeting we have, I will be closing that account or that fund, and we will move the money to probably the general fund. I think that's what we use to buy past trustee purchase the CLLC out of the general fund. So we will move that money into that, transfer the money into that fund. Right now, present time, we have 10 funds. I'm hoping by the time we get done this year, we'll be down to 8. Okay, and I'll tell you the other one here in a second. The next item is the Park and Recreation, the 1312, which is what we pay our portion of the park's general fund budget that we pay every year. We have about $127,322, and I know you guys have this in front of you, but for the people at home, they're hearing the amounts as we talk about it. That has been paid to the city for our portion of it. For the park capital, the next fund is the Park Capital Non-Reverting Fund. As of December 31st, there was $5,235,831 in that account. They've got some projects coming on. I think one we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. the add-on. You should all receive that, and that's why I've asked Mark to be here. The next fund is the rainy day fund. This is ranked the 8th one, and it's the rainy day fund. Again, zero, and there's no budget for next year, but there's $81,585 in there. That's kind of our emergency money if we need to dig into that. I hope we don't, but you just never know. The 9th fund is a special 2002 COIT, which was fire money. It goes back to 2002 when there was a problem with the state granting the township and the city both their share of the fire money, and so there's $3,681 left in there. I'm going to close that. The other one I'll be closing this year. Again, I will bring it to the next meeting, and I'd like to move that, since it was for fire, I'd like to move it to the fire fund also. And the last one is the general fund, which, as you know, is our big fund. It pays everything. We have $535,613 in there, and our budget is for this year is $832,200. One thing I want. Normally by this time we have our budget order. We haven't even received our 1782 notice, and I printed this out right before I came in here from the state, and it's telling us for Hamilton County they are in the budget review process. Judy Robertson, which is our rep for the state, she emailed us a couple weeks ago saying that Hamilton County is now up, and so we're going to be going through that. One of the issues we do have is with our COIT that we're going to be receiving this year. They cut us about $500,000, but I don't want to change anything from what we did on their budget until I receive that. And it has to come, it'll only be coming from one or two funds. It will be the Park Non-Reverting Fund or the Fire Fund. Because the other ones, there's like $20,000 I've taken out for general fund, $20,000 for township assistance, and I think I don't know, about $100,000 for park and recreation. So if we have to take $500,000 out of our COIT, if they're going to cut us that much, then it will be the fire fund and the park. At the present time, I'm having Crow Horwath do our letter that we get every year on how much goes to the non-reverting fund. They're doing that, and once I get that back, then I'll be able to break down the rest of them. But right now, I can't give you any numbers until I receive the 1782 notice in our budget order. So anyway, that's why I didn't bring too much of that. The rest of it in the report is basically the breakout of our cash fund statement, which I just went through, debt statements, any disbursements, any receipts that you might have a question on, the schedule of officers, so your names are all through this. That's a new sheet they've added where normally you just sign it, which you still will, but also they have a form that we had to put your name in. And the TA7, which is our township assistance form that tells you, how much we're spending in township assistance, how many people we're taking care of, and all of that. And then transfer. One thing, don't get too caught up in when Carl was up here talking about this liquidity management account. There's a lot to look at, and especially when you get these forms, when you talk about disbursements and receipts, because we have to disperse the money out of the fund and then put it back in. So you're going to say, wow, did we spend that much money? Well, it all has to do with this liquidity management account. They take it out and then they put it back in. So now you got this money. When you look at your report, you'll say, my God, $7,000 in receipts for debt service, and then another disbursements of $7 million, and then we dispersed $7 million. So it's counting the numbers twice. You're putting in the disperse, but then you're putting them in the receipts too. So don't get too caught up, and don't think, no, Debbie and I aren't spending a lot of money on stuff. But just, I just want you to realize that when you see those numbers, remember, a lot of that money, majority of that money is in the liquidity management account, and that's the way they had to do it, okay?
These are both ending balances, our regular monthly report and our year-end report.
You're right.
Are both, why are they different numbers?
They shouldn't be.
Well,
December 31st,
yeah, they should be the same.
I know what it
None of the numbers.
okay, if you look at the bottom, you look at the payroll, at the very bottom there, it says payroll. Okay, if you subtract that, which you should subtract that, and then it will be the same.
Well, on ending cash balance for any of these, firefighting 1.528 million, and then here it's 1.528311, and here it's 1.5283343.
Yeah, sure.
When you received that end of the year report, the liquidity management account had not been reconciled.
Okay.
And that didn't get done until the middle of January. So that's where that's off. I have a report that I print off from our financial system that gives me the annual report through our financial system. And so that's what those numbers come from.
So the minor differences are that reconciliation?
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Should we get a motion for approval first,
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Do we have a motion?
I move for approval of the 2012 annual report.
I second that.
Any further discussion?
I don't have any more.
I don't either.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the 2012 annual report carries. Next on our action item is action item D, and that is a resolution of the Township Board, Clay Township, regarding the purchase of real estate. Mark, would you like to speak to
Before
that?
you do that,
Where's-
you need to vote to make sure that you add on, you guys make a motion that you want to add this on.
Mr. President, I move to add on action item D, as you described, for the consideration of purchase of real estate by the Parks Department.
I second that.
Any discussion?
No, just interested in all the details.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Mark Westermeyer, and I'm the Director for Carmel Clay Parks Department. In front of you is the resolution that was prepared, and I want to give you the information and the history to this. The purchase that we're looking at is Brookshire Swimming Pool, which is part of the golf course complex. But probably only in government can you find something very convoluted and complicated. Prior to the city's purchase of the golf course, the pool and part of the building that is the clubhouse was sold to a private company, which was Brookshire Swim Club, which is owned by Leo Dirkman. Since that time, Leo and his family have run the swim club, and that was done at the time to ensure that the residents that live in Brookshire would continue to have a pool and everything would go on just like it had been. Well, we've reached a point that Leo's children are older and they're ready to get out of the pool business. Leo called me and said that he'd had a number of people that are interested in buying it, but he felt that from a community standpoint, it was best that this property be run from the Parks Department. And initially when he called me about it, I couldn't really understand why. Neither did I understand how the city could own everything except part of the building, sort of like a condo, but it's, I guess, complicated. And once I listened to Leo and we talked and we met about it, I started to better understand and appreciate the irony of the situation. The joinder agreement, or interlocal agreement between the township and the city is very specific in some of its language. And one of the things that occurs is at the time that the interlocal agreement or joinder goes away,